Hello everybody, welcome back to part 2 of our deep dive with Mr. Steven Trotter. He was a Principal of the Year, he's an Executive Chair and a true architect of transformational leadership. In this segment, Steven takes us inside his unique SKIM model of leadership from his book, The Art of Skimming Stones. I love doing that. He shares how he categorizes and empowers teams and why saying no to the noise is critical for real progress. We'll hear powerful stories from his upbringing, including the adversity that has shaped his worldview and the lessons he learned about confidence, humility, and helping others grow. Steven's experience as an AFL umpire, that's the Aussie rules for those who don't know what that is, and his passion for developing middle leaders add even more layers to this rich conversation. Whether you're leading a classroom, a company, or just yourself, Steven's insights on reflection, resilience, and influence are not to be missed. Here's Steven and myself. Please don't forget to follow the show where possible. Press follow, give us a review. It helps us out big time to keep reaching more and more people and keep getting more incredible stories on here. Here we go. Here's Steven and myself. Before we dive in, I want to give a big massive shout out to our now new proud sponsor, Eshu Skincare, a brand that truly aligns with leading our own way. This Australian-born company is dedicated to keeping skincare simple, effective, and straightforward. They've made waves in the US, even landed in Macy's and over 300 stores, and now they're back with a renewed focus on healthy skin and real results. If you want authentic skincare that fits your lifestyle, check them out in the show notes. Thanks to Eshu Skincare for supporting real stories and mental fitness on leading our own way. And if you're interested in sponsoring like Eshu Skincare, drop us a message. We'd love to connect. Yeah. And that scenario is definitely something that impacted you and how helped you certainly lead in a way that you clearly lead in a very good way. But there's also something else that happened in your childhood that certainly impacted you and your family at the time, going back to I think you probably know where I'm going with this, with the pub and because there's other layers to this of how your parents conducted themselves in terms of being parents. Now you can perceive that as how they led their way to help you not go through what you could have gone through, even though it was still pretty dark, right?
And I probably didn't realize how dark it was
That's right.
Again,
Yeah.
that's probably a kudos to my parents for protecting me from as much as they could. But when we owned the pubs, it was a random night that a gentleman stopped into the pub. You used to be able to get takeaway beers. Was on his way, not from Ballarat, but was from another town, and his mum lived in Ballarat. He was on his way to visit his mum. Found that our pub was open as he went past, dropped in to get some beers to take back to his mum's. Unbeknownst to my parents and the patrons of the pub, he'd been followed by a very well-known, notorious bikie gang because he'd had some conflict with their members. And when he came into the pub, they were only in and out in about 2 minutes, but had baseball bats, iron bars, chains, and many of these members just came in, flooded in each door, said to the rest of the patrons, "We're not here for you." Each of them took one shot at him and left him on the ground, basically pretty much dead, and left within 2 minutes. Not a glass was broken. It was just genuine unluckiness. I guess we look at it. If he'd stopped at another pub, it would have happened there. If he'd stopped at his mum's house, it would have happened there. He just happened to want a six-pack and stopped at our pub. Unfortunately, the local newspaper wrote it up as a rift between two rival bikie gangs and made the pub out to be a bikie pub and this notorious gang's like home pub. So mum and dad went from doing 300 meals on a Saturday night to the next night they had 6, and they were friends that had booked in. But I recall we woke up in the morning. We were on the 3rd story. Dad woke us up. We used to go down to the kitchen to get brekkie before we headed off to school. And he was very clear. I was about about 9. He said, right, go straight to the kitchen. Don't stop, head straight in there. And being young me, that made me a little bit curious. So I've walked down, seen the police tape, and went into the bar and sort of saw the mess. And I just remember sort of Dad grabbing me, I told you not to come here, and went back to the kitchen. The gentleman survived only because when one of the first hits he took to the head, and his head, when he fell, his head actually fell underneath, still connected to his body, underneath the pool table.
Glad you cleared that.
So majority of the shots were body shots. So it caved his head in, but he recovered. Now, I didn't really comprehend what had happened, and we had enough conversations to know there was an incident and we're all safe and etc. Now, as a result of that, Mum and Dad basically were bankrupt. So we moved to our family's best friends. We're spud farmers. We lived in their spud shed in a caravan. But again, coming back to, I guess, that idea of family, we thought it was the best adventure around. Like, I had the farm bike, I could ride around on the motorbike, and we're having a great time. And yeah, again, not until years later, I couldn't imagine what Mum and Dad were going through at that point, where their business had collapsed. There's some fairly significant health issues with Mum and Dad around that, in terms of, I recall we were driving down the highway at one point, and Dad had pulled over and had a panic attack on the side of the road. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I've spoken to him since, but because he heard a Harley Davidson coming.
Oh God, yeah.
So that set him off. But I reflect on that to go, well, what happened during that time with Mum and Dad? And we were going through, as a family, one of the hardest parts of our world. I didn't know that the bikies had cornered Dad down at the local shops and said if he testifies, that they're gonna come and get his family. Until the pub sold, there were undercover detectives that were dressed as patrons sitting in there for protection. But then, obviously going from a really thriving business that you've poured your heart into to living in a spud shed. But the interesting part about it, as kids, we were protected to a point where it was an adventure. I had no idea the financial ruins that were playing out. I had no idea the challenges that Mum and Dad were going through. And instead of, I guess, sitting on their hands, Dad went and started educating and took on a leadership role at the local TAFE, teaching cooking, and Mum went and became a principal. And so I talk about in my book that, in order to, you're going through the hardest part in your life, and I know there'd be financial parts, but in order to get through that, they invested their time in helping others. And that's a massive lesson for me to go, how do I get the best out of my world, and how do I get the best out of me? And I do that through seeing other people succeed. And thinking back to that time now, and I've had bits of chats, but I've never really sat down, and I'm probably a bit nervous to sit down and talk to Dad in depth about it, because I know the impact that had on him when I was a kid. I vividly remember the panic attack that he had just from hearing a Harley Davidson. But I didn't know that this bikie gang had threatened our lives in there.
I'm surprised by that part.
Yeah, and it was a very, very, I guess, poorly managed, well, like the media does. Back then there was no clickbait, so it was just headings.
Yeah.
Not a lot you could do with it. The scenario was pretty ugly. And as a family, it would have been the most difficult time I could imagine that Mum and Dad went through.
Absolutely.
But, to look back on it now, had they not have explained things over the journey, I would have just thought we were having a great time. Let's go out, let's go stay in a caravan in a spud shed for a few months and just have a bit of fun. So, investing that time and in others to help you succeed as a family is definitely sort of an embedded part of what I do. And it's something that sort of just sits in the back of my mind constantly around, where do I get my energy? Well, I get my energy through seeing other people succeed.
Yeah, I like that. No, I love that. What do you look at your parents as superheroes?
Oh, when I think back that way, like mum was a principal, and so I'd never actively sought to follow her footsteps, and probably never actually wanted to be a principal. Really, it's evolved over time, but I would say I'm where I am just heavily based on how I was brought up and the values and beliefs that were embedded in me. It's small things, like I said, calling the coach to apologise about my input into that conversation and the conflict that we had, owning my behaviours, but then now reflecting back and going, the time they spent in the development of others to give them success, and have then, I guess, allow us as a family to feel successful in whatever way that looks like, just being together, connecting, still living our life in a way that I never felt like I missed out on anything. But I couldn't imagine how hard that was for them. So it makes you value what they did, not only as a family, but what they were doing outside our world, focusing on other people, when very easily they could have sat there and gone, poor us.
I connect this to a quote that you put in your book, and the reason why I asked you about the superheroes is because you've used Superman in there, you've used the Dark Knight, and one of them was from Alfred, the famous, and it was a bit of a quote from there. Why do we all fall, sir? So we can learn to pick ourselves up. I'm connecting that to your family scenario. That's where it really began early on. And on the flip side of that, would you have phoned your coach if your mum hadn't have spoken to you about it?
No.
So it comes from your mother.
I wouldn't have, and the easy option was not to. The easy option was to go, do you know what? You're right. I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
And mind you, this was after the pub incident. So we moved on. This was a good few years later. And so, I think that quote from Alfred is something that I heard in The Dark Knight. And, I'm not a big comic geek or anything like that, but there's certain things that stick into your mind. And it's this scene where a young Bruce Wayne falls down into the Bat Cave and gets a bit scared, and Alfred helps him up. And, says to him, "Why do we fall, sir?" So we can learn how we can get back up. And I think that's such a strong analogy for so many things in our world. Like that was my mum and dad. They fell like off a cliff pretty much, and they pulled themselves back up. They learned how to stand up, and it was relearning, because it was a foreign world to them equally. A smaller version of that, and I'd never compare it to what mum and dad went through, but the coach telling me I wasn't good enough, and giving me the abuse there, like, he knocked me down, and I had a choice there, and I would have taken the easy option as a bit of a cocky teenager, but mum made me, challenged me to actually be better, and so I learned how to get back up, and I did that in a way that was going to, for me, prove him wrong, that I am as good as that. I'm going to get to where I think I should be. And I, again, a little bit of probably ego in there as well. That ego is not a negative thing, providing it's not getting in the road of being a positive and active person with connecting with others. Yeah. Ego is a driver. Ego helps us actually make decisions to go, actually, no, I'm going to be better than that. I think I can improve. So, ego is not a dirty word, but, as a teenager, I probably had a bigger ego than I needed to.
Yeah.
And it got punished a few times.
Nothing wrong with that.
No. So, and it did. It knocked me down, and sometimes for the better, and sometimes I needed to learn how to stand back up again. And I think they're the values that are definitely been embedded by my mum and dad in growing up.
Yeah. And it's the same with the word confidence. You know, people say there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. Actually, I think there isn't. I think there's two distinctive things, and I'll break it up into two sentences for you. For me, confidence, the definition of confidence is the ability to see yourself as a flawed person, but still hold yourself in high regard. Now, if you take one of those sentences away, seeing yourself as a flawed person and hold yourself in just high regard, that is arrogance.
Yeah.
And some people say, well, that's a fine line then. But putting those two sentences together, I think, is the perfect definition of confidence. And as a leader, I think we need to see ourselves as a flawed person. But of course, still stands tall. Still, as you said in your book sometimes, you know, bum out. I don't know if it was bum out. I can't remember how you said it now. But you know.
I stuff it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
I stuff it up as much as anyone else.
Because you're human, right? And you're learning to be a leader, and that's where we get it also wrong. I think whether people are experienced in their role, the next natural, maybe natural is not the word, but the natural progression then is to become a leader. But not everyone, like Simon Sinek says, not everyone wants to be a leader. Not everybody should be a leader. There's a lot of learning that comes after you have that role, and we've got to be able to support that. And maybe that's why part of many, many reasons of why you created the SKIM model, which I know we'll dig into before we do come to the close, because we could talk about this all day.
Yeah.
For sure. But yeah, it's like parenting as well. And I hate to say that, but you in your experience as a teacher, as a principal, and my experience in my roles as well, I hate to say it, but it's the same with parenting. We all have the capacity to be a parent. We all have the capacity to be a leader. Should we all be a parent? Do we all want to be parents? No, absolutely not. I mean, I've seen it in some schools where parents should definitely not be a leader, and that's not being mean. If you're, sexually abusing your child or leaving them around knives, and which I've seen and heard, and I've had people on the podcast that have been through that, those parents didn't deserve to have you.
Yep.
I hate to say it, not to bring it down to another level.
Yeah, no, but it's fact. And,
it is fact. Yeah.
The reality is, I think when we're talking about arrogance and confidence, I'm confident in what I do, but I'm also heavily confident in the fact I don't get it right a lot of the time. But
crystal clear in your model.
I think when you're talking about arrogance in that space, it's not you might know you've got it wrong, but you haven't acknowledged that you've got it wrong.
Yeah. Next layer to it, yeah.
And so that's important, that when I stuff up, I have to own that stuff up. Whatever that looks, or whatever the ownership looks like. It might be going to apologise to the staff member because she caught me at a bad time and I just was a bit snappy. I wasn't my best self.
Yeah.
Because they deserve a good version of me, and sometimes they're not going to get it, not out of intent, but just out of whatever's going on. So I need to own that and go and make that right.
Yeah.
I need to mend that relationship, because that's not on them, that's on me. So it could be as simple as that, or it could be as simple as created a professional learning opportunity for my team that actually sucked, and it didn't achieve what I needed to. So stand up in front and go, do you know what? That wasn't what we were trying to get to today, so we're going to reset. And that's okay too. But, I think there's the difference. The confidence in, I know the work and I'm comfortable with the work, and I know my team and I'm comfortable to lead my team, but I'm not going to get it right every time.
Absolutely.
And owning that, I think, is the difference between confidence and arrogance.
Absolutely. And on that note of getting to know people, if I was to ask your staff then, how would they answer that question of how did Steven get to know you? How do you think they would answer that?
How would they answer that? Well, I think they would answer it in a balanced way. Just, I think my team know what they're going to get. It's not that, what day is it today? But I genuinely sit in my staff room at recess and lunchtime, and I ensure that my schedule allows for that. Doesn't mean it happens 100% of the time.
Of course.
But I make intentional decisions about where I sit, because I might want to sit next to someone or near someone that I need to talk to because I haven't connected with them for a while, or I show interest in in the fact that there's stuff going on in people's worlds and kids and VC, like they're studying year 12 to go into university, but it has to be genuine. Like fake interest is seen through like anything. I'm genuinely interested in the people that sit in my staff room because they're important to me. Not just for the success of my environment, but they're people that are relying on me to be a little bit of a beacon of light to help them achieve what they need to in their world, to leave the day feeling successful, to leave the day feeling accomplished. And I can either dampen that or I can enhance it. And so I take a genuine interest in the people that are sitting in my staff room because they are important to me.
Yeah. Well, that's an infinite mindset, isn't it? You know, thinking about the long game, not necessarily of the school environment, but for them as a person. I used to love the idea of essentially, it's weird how we've met because I used to think of myself as impacting a small classroom and the community and the parents, but then also a small community being a leader, a principal. But then I wanted to really affect multiple communities, meaning multiple schools. So I thought, well, what could I do? When I retire, I could become not retire, but from a principal role, do essentially what you do, go and help other principals be good principals, but focus on the human side of it, not all the jargon and the tick boxes. That's really what I was quite passionate. Obviously, I got burnt along the way, and that changed the trajectory of that thought process. I suppose that's why the podcast exists.
Yeah.
It's just a different angle, right?
It's a different angle for achieving the same thing, really.
Yeah, absolutely. But I forgot where my point was on that now. I was going somewhere with that and I completely lost it. But anyway, yeah, that's really where I wanted to go. I was really fascinated with helping people. And that was the core value. And I think you're right. And that sitting down and having those valuable conversations, casual, in that beautiful setting, I think does that infinite mindset. It goes back to Simon Sinek, isn't it? Infinite mindset versus finite mindset. Yeah. This is off the topic, actually, and it's only just come to me. But have you ever come across... and I think this might be a good way to go briefly through your SKIM model. Yeah. A narcissistic leader. Okay. I thought you might have done. I know you have an example and of why I can see why you've brought this out and you want to discuss that. But yeah, have you got an example of a narcissistic personality?
Oh, look, There's various examples across the board, and I know you've come across a few as well. And I talk about a couple in my book as well for various, influences. And I think the reality of people is there are narcissists out there. There's narcissistic leaders. There's people that are going to, whether intentional or sometimes. And often unintentional. It's just because that is the embedded way that they believe is the right way to approach a situation. We'll try to bring you or others down. And so when I have come across those leaders, and more so now into my more experienced part of the world versus the younger version of me, I have to make a really intentional decision about what it is in this scenario that I'm willing to accept, what I'm not, what battle I'm willing to have, and what influence will I be able to have with that. Because when you have a person who is narcissistic, sorry, just getting the tongue tied there, how much influence will I actually have on them and their beliefs and their values in the short term? And generally, it's not a lot. Now, that doesn't mean that door's closed, but I've got to make a decision around where will I have the greatest influence and how will I work my way, I guess, being really intentional, and how will I approach that person to get the best out of them without taking too much of that behavior on board emotionally. And it's a really difficult decision to make, but you have to make that constantly. And I'm going to come across more people like that, as you will. I have to own, again, how I approach that in my behaviours. I can't control theirs.
Yep. That's it. Yep. All right. Before we come to the end then, I think we've done a full circle of your personal, would you say? Or have I missed anything off, do you think?
I think we've probably talked about me enough.
That was my fault because I wanted to know.
No, that's all.
The SKIM model. Let's go through it. And I feel like the SKIM model is it's a category of types of personalities and learner types, right? Am I right?
Yeah, in a way, without boxing people in.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
because you cross-referenced it with towards the end of your book. You cross-referenced it with the other model, wasn't it? The where you compare them with the innovators and the laggards and things like
yeah. So
that.
Rogers'
Yeah,
diffusion of innovation model. Yeah,
because I was thinking about that when I was reading it. I've actually, in stages of my life, crossed probably every type there.
yeah,
I
yeah,
first started off as an innovator, especially when I opened the school, right? But then when you then start to get not necessarily there necessarily, obviously I don't want to defame anyone, but anywhere in my career, whether it's state school, Catholic school, private school, which I've worked in all, I've been an innovator. I've been
yeah.
an early adopter, and then I've sat back and gone, well, I've been crushed every time I've tried any of that. So now I'm a laggard because I'm going to sit back for a long time, roll my eyes, and go, this is never going to work.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm guilty and I'll hold my hands up and I don't care anymore. But I've experienced all of that. But
yeah,
the SKIM model,
yeah,
let's talk about it. Bring the Meerkats in, the three
yeah.
C's. Let's rock that out. And I know we've been going for a very, very long time. How long have we been going for? Now I'm 50. Oh, shit, I thought it was an hour
All
and a
right.
half. Oh, my Lord.
I know.
Let's do
We,
it.
we can wrap this up nice and quick. Well,
No, don't rush it. I want it to be
no.
powerful still.
Well, the reality of the SKIM model is it's going back to what I was saying before. I reflected on how I lead. How have I had impact on the environments I've been in?
Just taking a very quick break to thank our sponsor, SU Skincare. If you haven't heard of them, SU Skincare started right here in Australia, using Australian ingredients to make skincare straightforward and accessible, especially for men who want results without the fuss. Their journey took them all the way to the US, where they were featured in Macy's and over 300 stores. Now they're back with a fresh approach, focusing on healthy skin and authenticity for everyone. I'm proud to have SU Skincare as a sponsor on Leading Our Own Way. See the show notes for their website and to see how you can keep your skin healthy and confident. And if you're interested in sponsoring like SU Skincare, drop us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Now, right back to the episode.
They've been successful, been high-performing environments, we've transformed environments. So what is it that I was doing? Because I couldn't actually label it. So I knew how I led, and I actively did it quite instinctively at times, sometimes consciously, sometimes it would just be, your default, the way that I was approaching things, and maybe it was a bit of luck that I'd used the right default at the right time. But I couldn't actually activate the visual of what it was that I did. And I've actually, been to a number of like running workshops, and I'll ask leaders, can you draw a picture of how you lead? And they find it really hard because we don't have a model of leadership. It's more reactive than proactive.
Exactly. Nailed it.
So, and when we talk about models, there'd be very few schools I know in Australia, and I'd imagine in most of the developed world, that wouldn't have a version of an instructional model, a way of teaching, to be effective. So we've got a common language, a common approach to a certain type of teaching. We're following the research-based elements to make sure we're having the greatest influence and impact on the kids sitting in front of us.
Yeah.
But we don't have one for leadership. And the great thing about a model, like an instructional model, it also reduces your cognitive load. Because when you're teaching, you're not thinking about each of the compartments. You become naturally attuned to what comes next, how the timing, your planning's based around that model. So you know what sections and elements, and you'd see this as you go into schools. They'd have their planning set up, because you get the benefit of going into various schools, set up in a way that allows you to follow basically a process of teaching and learning that has all the important elements in there, from explicit teaching to reflection to work time and individual learning and sort of problem solving. But we don't have that in leadership. So, or very few of them. There's very few around of really effective, simplistic models to actually use. And I love this term from Fullen, who says the idea of leadership is to turn the complex into the seemingly simple, and he calls it simplexity,
Yes.
which is a great word. And so what we're doing with a model is actually trying to be intentional about how we approach. So we're going into a to leading a new initiative, but we actually have a really good idea about how we're going to do it. Now, it doesn't mean it's not going to adapt and deviate, because it has to, because people are unpredictable, but they're also predictably unpredictable. We know that there's going to be changes, and that's okay. But when we get into this idea of the model, so the SKIM model has 4 parts to it, which 4 categories. And we think about that diffusion of innovation curve. You've got your innovators up one end, you've got your laggards up the other end. I dispute that a bit.
Yeah.
Because like you said, if I'm a laggard now, that's because of the content that we're talking about. That's because of my belief or values that may not align to them. I might not feel confident or capable in that space. So if I'm teaching and doing some professional learning on numeracy, but I feel my strengths in literacy, I might be further up that curve because I don't feel comfortable and confident here. I'm going to have to become comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But if that same professional learning was in literacy, which is my area, I love it, I might be up the innovator end. So this is actually a really dynamic space. Okay. And what we can get caught in when we walk into a staff room is pigeonholing Steven as a hard to lead staff. But Andy, you're easy to lead because you're the one that I can rely on to put their hand up every time.
I'll say yes all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as soon as we do that, we've categorized our staff and we've actually probably lowered our expectation bar, which is actually going to mean they're going to actually achieve what we want them to. Because we're going to look out for Steven being a pain. We're going to look out for Steven being hard to lead. We're not going to actually try and engage Steven or really harness some of those skills or capabilities because we've categorized him in this space.
Yeah.
So we need to move away from that and actually look at our staff room as almost his pendulum, where depending on the topic, the timing, the capacity, the culture, that pendulum could fall anywhere for any one of our staff members, and we have to be open to be able to shift that and not actually have that naughty student syndrome, where we're in a classroom, we know that this student's naughty, so we look for them to be naughty, and guess what? They will be. So we need to change that perspective because we can do that with our staff, the naughty staff syndrome. We're looking for someone to be a pain and, question. And so when we're looking for it, we'll find it. So we start off in the SKIM model, the S, which I call the success team. And this team is really important in the success of the implementation. It doesn't mean it's perfect and it doesn't mean that it's going to be right every time, but it's going to be transparent. And we're actually going to have a team that we intentionally select for a few reasons. And I'll break it into the 3 C's, and I won't go into them deep, but they're in the book on page 60.
Yep, I've got them.
Context, capacity, and culture.
Yep.
And it's sort of a little reflection checklist because context, we start to look at, the details around the staff members' contextual knowledge and understanding. So are they passionate about literacy? Because if they are, maybe there's someone that might have an influence on others. Maybe we can harness some of their skills. And then you move into your capacity. What's going on for them at the moment? Are they leading several other areas? But we also, this is really important, that's something we overlook. Potentially, let's just say we've got, I don't know, one of our staff members going through a divorce at the moment. Do you know what? Maybe they're not the right person to add some additional pressure to right at this point in time. Even though they might be good at this, that would be a conversation that you might have because they might just need to sit back and, soak this in for a little bit because of their capacity, because that will impact their cognitive load either way, whether we want to agree with it or not.
Yeah.
It will. Our outside world influences our professional world.
Or they want a distraction and want to have some value in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's not a no, but we need to consider it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay?
Agree.
And then the final one on there is a culture. And this is really important because we need to start to go through, for instance, I know in Victorian primary school education at the moment, there's the mandate of a phonics approach in our Prep to 2. Okay. Now, you might have someone who's really passionate about that. I might have a literacy person who's really passionate about the old way we did it.
Yeah.
Now, if they're really passionate about that and we try to get them in on this space, maybe they're not the right person for now because we need to actually lead them to understand why this approach might be the new approach of doing it, not the one they're passionate about. So it's really getting an understanding of where your staff sit, their strengths, their challenges, their interests, their passions, what they're really good at, the things that they mightn't feel as comfortable or confident with. And you sort of go through this idea of selecting your success team. And what I really stress is it's not the easy people, it is the right people. So the easy people in Roger's diffusion of innovation curve are the innovators and early adopters, because they'll put their hand up no matter what. Yep. Because they're risk takers. They're happy to jump on board. They don't care. They're right to go. But are they the right people to influence the next team? That's what we've got to consider, because then we move on to in the SKIM, the K, which is the knowledge team. Now, these people need a little bit more knowledge. They're going to be watching the success team. They're not going to need a heap of leadership, really embedded leadership into this group, because they're going to be influenced by the success team. They just need a little bit more information. Again, the size of that team and the dynamics of that team need to be intentionally thought about. Then we move on to in the next one, which is the IR, and this team starts to get a little bit more tricky, and we call this the inquisitive team, because they're going to start to challenge things. They're going to start to ask questions. They're going to be a bit more inquisitive. And I'll use a positive term because it is positive. We need to accept the fact that not everyone's going to agree with the approach.
Yeah,
they need to be led to a new understanding. Not told, like I said before, not persuaded or convinced, led to a new understanding. So the inquisitive team is where I need to start to really think about how I'm going to approach my leadership in this space. I need to start thinking about the people that are going to be in this team and how am I going to have a greater influence on them to understand the implementation process or the new initiative or what it is that we're trying to implement at this point in time. Then we move on to the final team, which is called our measured team. And this now is the minority. Again, if we go into the interview, Rogers curve, we've got the laggards at the end. Now, measured team are not the laggards. The measured team are the people that need a different version of leadership to what you've offered everyone else.
Yeah.
And by this stage, they've had the success team, the knowledge team, the inquisitive team, and they're now at a point where it's their turn to start to implement. And it's okay that they're last. It's okay that it's taken time, because they've needed that to actually build their confidence, understanding, see that it value adds to their work. Wrapped around this, I call that the Meerkat effect.
I love it.
And I came up with this term actually when I was talking about earlier. There was someone that didn't do my my survey when I was doing the executive chair role. Secondary school, got the call from the Prin to say thanks but no thanks. I actually sort of took that as a little bit of a challenge to go, right, I'm going to see how we can sort of work out our professional learning to engage you a little bit more. So in this model, she would have been sitting in the measured team. And what we actually did, we had a numeracy focus at this point. And I used our teams to actually run the professional learning. So I didn't do it, but I used the teams that were building their confidence in this space to run the professional learning. We celebrated, we problem solved as a group. We were really transparent around what was working, what was not. We got input. We collaborated with the people that weren't necessarily in the lead teams at that point. We got everyone involved. We did the professional learning together. Then, each team would play their part in whether it's mentoring or coaching or trialing and bringing it back and sharing it with everyone. And so I was talking about this concept because in the second semester, we launched a new version of our maths learning. So we've done first semester, second semester. And I put out for expressions of interest for who would like to be involved with this program. And the second phone call I received was this principal and said, I'm in. And so I was talking about this idea and I just used the term, it was like a meerkat. Like we were doing all this great stuff and it was like that principal was sitting at the back, sort of standing up like a meerkat going, oh, what's going on over there? That actually looks like it works.
You can see the head sticking up.
Yeah, I'm a bit interested. But equally with a meerkat, what they're doing when they're standing on their mound is actually looking for dangers as well. They're trying to spot how will this influence us and whether I like it or not. And so that idea was actually a little bit of a jovial term that stuck. That this idea of, in our staff room, what we're building is this opportunity for the staff that might be in the inquisitive or measured team to sort of be sitting there going, actually, this isn't scary. I can see the benefit here. I think I want to have a go at this. And it's slow and steady, but it's intentional.
I love that. It's the micro moments, isn't it? The little micro moments everywhere that you're really trying to emphasize through this.
Yep.
Is how I'm seeing it. Has anyone adopted this model in their schools then, or is their practice from your? Because I'm guessing you've presented this quite a lot and spoken about it quite a lot. Has anyone adopted it and then wanted further advice from you?
Yeah, so there's several schools that I've worked with for various forms over the last number of years since it was published that have adopted this model. And what I'll always say is this is a starting point, but you have to know your people. Yeah. And then you need to start to build this into your just natural culture. So when I lead with my teams, I don't have the SKIM model up, but they understand it.
Yeah.
So as we're talking about, right, who's our success team? Where are we starting? We know as a leadership team, we've got an agreement that this is how we approach it. Now, it doesn't mean, again, like our teachers, we're not robots. But I know that if we're implementing something, and my staff know that if we're implementing something, we go through like this phase of trialing, then bringing back, collaborating, problem solving, sharing the successes, then going back in, coming back again. The team's got a bit bigger. Someone new's presenting. How are they going to influence other people? Being intentional and go, well, I know that Steve's a bit in the measured team at the moment, but the neighbouring teacher who Steve has a really good relationship with is in the knowledge team. So I'm going to get them to partner up and do some observations to build Steve's, confidence in that space. So we're not sort of going through a process and going, oh, now what? Oh, we need to make that decision. We actually have a really clear mapped out plan about how implementation works. And then we harness the people along the way, and then that changes and adapts, and sometimes we get it wrong, but that's okay because we've got enough of a really clear pathway that it's still messy, improvement's messy, but it's slow, it's intentional, and it's deep learning, which is what we want.
Absolutely. So, and I hate time restraints, don't get me wrong, but just as a rough guide then, from what you've just said, what's that rough, from where you began to where you've just finished then, what roughly would you say? Is that months? Is that 2 years? What would that look, what would be the time frame?
I wouldn't put a timeline to it, but I would, because every staff size is different, every implementation process is different, and you're starting from a different point. So we might have a goal, right, by the end of this term, this is where we want to be. Next term, this is where we want to be. Term after, this is where we want to be.
Yeah.
But we have to constantly reassess that, because sometimes we're well ahead because the staff have just engaged and they just want to go. So our success team just blows up because everyone goes, right, we want in on this. We just get it. Like, we just understand it. Doesn't mean the learning stops, but the momentum and excitement about it just takes off. So I don't pull the handbrake on, other than we make sure it's done in a really systematic, intentional way. Yeah. But I'm not going to say no to people that want to do learning and want to improve. So let's harness that and find a way to do it. Other times you get in there and you just go, actually, I don't think they're ready for this right now. You can tell the engagement isn't as high. So what do we need to step back with, simplify, and bring back in to build the foundations before we take off?
And it's okay to push that way you just said, I want this, I'm going to have to, let's aim for the end of this term for this. It's okay to push that back, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the beauty in it all. And again, I love what you said about bring people into my calm, not go into their chaos. I love that. That's a really good. And I've always said I use the analogy of basketball, coaching, playing, refereeing, because I've done all that aspect in the game of basketball. But I always try and teach people when I'm giving them advice around position of the game or understanding connection and relationships on the court, or with the coaches, the players, the community, and the audience, I always talk about the feel of the game. Like, we've got to understand the feel of the game. And we've taken away the feel of the game, I think, because everything's become so black and white binary over the years. I see it in basketball referees now. You're not allowed to ask them questions. You're not allowed to. They're not allowed to go through difficult moments with a coach. Of course, if a coach is aggressive, you send them out. Of course, that's not what I'm saying. But the coach is emotional, and we're trying to take the emotion out of the game, and you can't, because emotional. We've had 9 survival emotions since the day we were alive. You cannot take that part out of the brain. So I really enjoy that part. So I suppose then, what would your advice be to give new principals or aspiring leaders about building momentum and sustaining improvement then?
Well, I'll go back. The first thing is understand self. Really start to work on reflective practice. Understand who you are as a leader, why you make the decisions you make, your values, that leadership story of origin. Who are you when you're overwhelmed and stressed? What is it like on the other side of you? What is it like to be led by you? So get a really good gauge of that. But the other important thing is just always go back to this comment I use with my staff is it broken?
Yeah.
Is it broken? And if the answer is, well, no, well, do you know what? You've got time. And normally if the answer is yes, it's a safety issue. Yeah. But if you can sit there and go, if I did nothing today, absolutely nothing, didn't touch this, I went home sick, didn't do a thing today, would it still be okay tomorrow? If the answer to that is yes, it'll be okay, then do you know what? Take your time, think about it, and engage the right people to help you problem solve as a team, as a leader, as a staff, to make sure that the decisions you're making are actually going to have a better impact.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've actually used that analogy on myself. I was like, I say to people, hey, mate, I might not be fixed, but I'm not broken.
Yeah.
No, I love it. Let me just see if there's anything else that I wanted to bring up on my notes then, because I think I brought up the little snippets that I thought was quite powerful. I love it. Brilliant.
Good one.
The question for you then is, you might not get asked this question. I've asked 2 people this prior on the podcast. And you get asked quite a lot of questions, obviously, being the position that you're in. What's a question you wish people would ask you, but they never do?
Do you know, I think for leaders, and I've been lucky, I've had some good people around me, but I think for senior leaders, for staff to just walk in and say, are you okay? How are you going? I think a genuine conversation breaks down barriers that, we'll always get I'm fine. But we know we're in this, as William Degene calls it, the era of overwhelm, where everything's at our fingertips. That I think in the busyness of the world, there's often assumptions that senior leaders are almost robotic. We can just get on with it and go. But, I always value when a staff member just comes in and goes, hey, how are you today? How are you going? So not necessarily a direct leadership question, but when we're talking about connecting with people, it goes both ways. It's not just the leader connecting with the staff. We want to build a staff that will connect with leadership as well.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. It's I've shared this example many times, but I've been into many schools where the leader doesn't even acknowledge that I exist. So after a few times of being there, I've opened doors and they've walked past and looked at me, and they've seen me in the staff room. I've seen them see me in the staff room. I actually go, hey, I'm Andy, by the way.
Yeah.
I put them in a hopefully a very reflective mode to go, why is he asking me that? I am the leader. I am the principal. I should be welcoming him into my school.
Absolutely. Everyone that walks through the gates of a school environment should feel welcomed, safe, happy, and that's the job of the leadership.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in that scenario, it was my job because I was like, this is enough. This guy needs to recognize who I am. Not that I think I'm of high importance. But I still want to be valued when I go, want to keep
Yeah.
going back because I actually do like the place and
Yeah.
happy to go back there all the time.
Yeah.
That, it's funny you bring up the question, "How are you okay?" Because I actually did a reel recently about debunking that question, and not that we shouldn't ask if people are okay and how are you. Absolutely, we should. But I'm gonna and I've started the podcast off with this question many times, so I'm going to ask you the question instead of asking, "Are you okay?" I'm going to ask you, which I think people should. I want to make this quite normal because it needs an answer, a very distinct answer. If I was instead of asking that question, where's your mental health state on the scale of 0 to 10? 0 being rock bottom and 10 being content. Where would you say you lie?
As of today, I reckon I'm pushing. I'll say an 8. I won't go too much high. And that's the positive side, I think, isn't it? 8's good.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Why is it an 8 then? I mean, I suppose this digs into your future plans, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, it does. Well, I'll get to have a chat with you for a good couple of hours. So that's
stop.
that's good. That's been a rewarding, and we both like to talk, so we've gone for a while.
We do, yeah. We'll have to meet for a coffee after this and finish it.
Yeah, I know. But 2026, I've actually taken the year off. Going to pursue some other hobbies and interests, and the fam and I are jumping in the caravan and going to head up the west coast of Australia for a couple of months. So, in terms of my just overall mental health, knowing that I'm going on an elongated holiday that I haven't for 20 years is very exciting and a little bit daunting because I haven't had this much time off, and I'm living in a box with my family for months on end. So we haven't spent that much time together in a really confined space. So that's going to be interesting. But, just knowing that I've got a bit of an adventure ahead and I'm going to have some brain space to pursue some things that I've wanted to, but haven't probably had the capacity to do, is really exciting.
Yeah, nice. Love that. So in a professional sense, are you allowed to say, you might not be able to, but are you allowed to say where you're going to venture on that before you head back into the education system?
In terms of passions and things like that?
Or professionally?
Or professionally, yeah. Oh, look, there's several education environments that have contacted me to support them with like the implementation of the SKIM model. I'm really got a lot of passion around the development of middle leaders. I believe they're the engine room of improvement and impact in organisations generally, but schools particularly. And I feel they're undervalued, my professional opinion. So I've got a little bit of work in that space as well around helping some schools activate their middle leadership team, which that is very rewarding work for me, because that's where I think, like I said, you can harness some of the best attributes of some of your most influential leaders that are the conduit between that senior leadership and classroom. They're a leader, but they're a colleague, and if you get that right, I'll tell you what, the sky's the limit.
Beautiful. Love it. I'm excited to see where your journey takes you. And when you get back, we'll have to catch up and do some things and hope, and this will be a successful episode for everyone to learn from as well.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, it's been a privilege.
Beautiful. So I always ask the guests to finish on a piece of powerful advice. We've given gems throughout, but if there was one piece of powerful advice, generally speaking, what would that be, do you think, Stephen?
One thing of powerful advice. I'm going to just say one word, and that's reflection.
You certainly did that.
It is one of the most powerful tools as a leader that you could have in your toolbox. Self-reflection and situational reflection. If you can harness that and be able to use that to actually improve, you're going to come out with such strength in the way that you deal and manage and talk to, connect with your community, your people, broader community.
Yeah.
We get it wrong more often than we get it right. But if you can acknowledge that, reflect on it, I tell you what, your improvement we'll just keep going up.
Absolutely. Well, that's the powerful middle, though, isn't it? You can reflect, but if you don't do anything with it, it's pointless. And it's the same with the knowledge. Everyone says knowledge is powerful. Well, it's not. It's only powerful if you actually use it.
If you use it, yeah.
That's it. Stephen, I always ask this question. It's pretty obvious what your purpose is, but I ask the guest to put it into one powerful line to leave us on a powerful, impactful moment. So, Stephen, what is your purpose?
My purpose, to have a greater influence on those that are having the influence on our future generations.
Love it. Steven Trotter, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on Leading Our Own Way. We've been, like you said before, we've been trying to do this for a while, and we just had the time, and it was the right time. So
it was. It's been great.
Feels great. Feels good. I'm so honoured to have you on the show, and we'll be friends forever.
Absolutely. I'll keep listening, mate.
Good. I hope you do. Hope you're enjoying the show as well. But to everybody else, if you want to get a copy of The Art of Skimming Stones, everything will be in the show notes. Please contact Stephen. I'll put everything on the show notes if you want to reach out. You never know. It might be a facility that want to hire you, Stephen. Who knows?
Well, jump on my website and send me an email.
Yeah, just whilst you're here then, before I let you go, reel that off. Where can people contact you?
Yeah, so www.steventrotter, one word, Stephen with a V.com.au. All my information's on there. I'm on LinkedIn, Steven Trotter as well. So jump on there. You can sort of follow me through that as well. And books available through there or through the publisher, which is Amber Press.
Beautiful. Well, like I say, I'll put those links in the show notes for people to have easy access to. But yeah, thanks for joining me. Thanks for joining me on my journey. Like I say, it's such an honour, Stephen. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Right, to everybody else, have a great weekend. Keep leading your own way. Make sure you come back next week for another amazing, inspiring journey. We'll see you then. But keep enjoying life. Take care. Bye for now. Well, that's it with Stephen and myself. As we wrap up this two-part conversation with Stephen, I hope you're walking away with more than just ideas. You're leaving with a fresh perspective of what leadership can be. Stephen's journey reminds us that true leadership is about intentional choices, deep self-awareness and reflection, and the courage to connect, even when it's uncomfortable. Take these lessons into your own life, reflect, engage, and remember, the small moments matter. Every day is an opportunity to lead with empathy and purpose. So go make it count. Have a great week. Keep leading your own way. We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening and watching Leading Our Own Way. So we can stay together forever and share more incredible journeys, please subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss next week's episode and what that amazing guest has to offer to the world. Please support Leading Our Own Way, and we'll get you on next week's episode.